Tip of the week, curry pepper spray. You don't know when it could save your life.
Tip of the week. Breakfast is bad for you. Don't
Tip
eat
of the
breakfast.
week, breakfast could kill you.
Hi, I'm Chansey.
And I'm Lila.
And this is for Criming Out Loud.
Well, how's your week been?
It's been just dandy. I fixed the kerfuffle with my car. A couple weeks ago, I was visiting Lila in small town Idaho, and my car literally broke down on the freeway, and so I had to get it towed to Utah, and I dropped it at the dealership this week, and I was like, this is going to be like $1 million. And what happened was it was $1 million. For anybody who knows anything about cars, apparently my catalytic converter was broken, which is like a $2,500 repair. And they called me and they were like, so it was the catalytic converter. And I like straight up started crying. I was like, okay, this
Like
is
on the
fine.
phone? Did you like cry on
I
the
was
phone?
like, it wasn't the kind of like sobbing crying where people can tell you're crying, just the like your tears overflow and you're just like silently weeping while somebody tells you bad news and you're trying to keep it under wraps. And I was like, oh great, that's awesome. Super, just fix it. That's cool. And then he was like, but the good news is that because this part was fixed by us last year, it's under a parts warranty and it's 100% free.
Whoa!
And I was like, oh my gosh. I was freaking out. So it was a miracle. It was a car miracle.
Wow. Yeah, for those of you that don't know, Chansey has the worst luck with cars. She literally, any car she buys breaks down. So,
Literally. It's every single one of my cars I've had engine problems with.
yeah. No,
Anyways.
that's great. I'm so happy for you and your car troubles that are no longer troubles. So, what a miracle.
What a true miracle. Anyways, how was your week?
You know, it's pretty good. Pretty good. School started and my life ended. So, just kidding.
What a great
No,
overview.
it's been great. This year of second graders is much better than last year. Last year was filled with what I would say are pretty close to demon children, but that's okay. They were a tough group. And this group, they're all a bunch of cuties. I did make a bunch of them cry though yesterday, first week of school, and they're a chatty group because they're small. There's only 2 classes of second graders. And so it's like they've grown up together basically and they all know each other because you can only mix them up so much every year between the 2 classes. And so they are chatty. And I finally got really sick of it. We're doing just this little activity with toothpaste and they got really excited about it. And there was a group of like 4 of them and they would not shut up. And I was like calling their names on my microphone. I was like, not their names, obviously. Bob, Billy, Jesse, John. Nothing. They just didn't even notice my existence. And the whole class was staring at them and they didn't notice. And so finally I just walked up to them and I was like, sit down. You're done. I had at least 3 of them crying. They went back to their seats and just started falling. I should probably feel bad about that. I know that second graders are young, but they're capable of listening to instructions. And so anyway, I had one girl that literally just hid under her desk in the fetal position and cried for the last hour and a half of school. And I was simply just like, are you going to get up out of your chair and stop acting like that? Or do I need to tell your mom that this is how your day is going?
The subtle threats of a second grade teacher.
We worked it out. It was fine. But I was like, I have officially started my reign as the mean teacher. So it's wonderful. That was my week.
Sounds like a great week, honestly. You gotta set the tone the first week. Sounds like you did that. So
sometimes it's really hard when you teach younger grades because it's like you don't want to be mean to little kids. Like, and you feel mean.
Yeah.
Because
I'm sure
you're like,
you do.
You have to be pretty intense sometimes, like strict, and be like, oh my gosh, you guys are terrible, sit down. like I did. It was kind of mean, but then I shamed them in front of the whole class, which is probably not the best moment, but they didn't really leave me a choice, so it is what it is. No, and
Everybody's
like you,
looking and they're not listening. You got to do
you like
something.
practice walking down the hall a billion freaking times. It's like one kid looks at a kid wrong, and you're like, oh, we gotta practice. We just weren't there.
We
Go
weren't
back to
doing our
class,
best.
line back up,
Everybody walk
try
back.
again. Then they're all, oh. Yeah, basically, yeah. And then they look around, they're
Sounds
like, who was
crazy.
it? It was you. I know it was you. Stop doing that. I'm like, guys, it was okay. Anyway, so yeah,
Just
there you
chill.
go. Life of a teacher. What story do you have for us today?
Well, my story happens in the UK,
Wow, you've done
in
like an Australian
Scotland.
one,
I know.
now a little Scottish one.
I haven't done an American one in a hot minute, but whatever. I
Okay,
guess I
well, this
wish
is
I just
exciting.
lived somewhere else. Is what it is. Anyways, this story happens in Clydebank, Scotland, and I'm just going to apologize right now because we've had some people throw fits about the way we pronounce things or talk about geography. And I just want to put it out there in the universe that I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know how to pronounce things. I don't speak any other languages except for American English. So I can't say things right. So if it's not Clydebank, I'm sorry right now. And there's going to be some other names in here that I don't know how to pronounce, and I'm doing my best. So there's that caveat at the beginning.
Amen.
Boom. So this is a story of what happened to a 15-year-old girl named Paige Doherty. Paige was just your regular teenage girl. She lived with her stepfather, her mother, and her siblings in Clydebank, Scotland. They lived on a normal residential street in this kind of smaller town. She loved to dance. She was just kind of like a fun-loving girl, and she had this beautiful long dark hair. And all of the pictures of her, she's just like smiling so much, and she seems like such a bright, happy person. So the story is even more awful because of that juxtaposition, honestly. So, this story starts on the evening of March 18th in 2016. And when I first heard about this case, for some reason, this case really intrigues me. So I hope you guys like it. But it's kind of more modern-ish, and so there's more technology stuff in it, and the forensics were kind of cool. So, anyways,
Sweet.
I'm excited to talk about it. So in the evening of March 18th, 2016, Paige was staying over at a friend's house for the night because it was a Friday night and they were having a sleepover and they were just like living their best lives, doing their thing. You know how teenagers do that. And they lived in this small town in Clydebank. So it's like she's like right down the street from her parents' house and it's no big deal. And the next morning, she didn't go home because she had to go to a shift at work. She worked at a hairdresser's in a nearby town. So the next morning, she left around 8 ish. She left her friend's house and she just started walking towards town because she was going to take the bus to go to work, which is what she normally did. And so she left her friend's house and everything seemed great. But later in the day, she still hadn't shown up for her shift. And the people at her job were kind of concerned because it wasn't like her to not show up. She'd never done that before. And so they contacted her mother, Pamela Monroe, and Pamela hadn't heard from her either. And so she had just assumed her daughter was at work like she was supposed to be, like no big deal. She's just working. But when she hears that she's not at work, she starts freaking out a little bit and she starts calling around and asking for people to look for Paige because she's like, where on earth could she be? It's not like her to just not show up to her job. And so they immediately start like looking around, whatever, and nobody can find her. And her friend just tells her like she left at 8 o'clock. I have no idea where she went after, blah, blah, blah. And later in the evening, when they still couldn't find her, her parents called the police because no one had heard from her all day. And they immediately filed a missing person report and they started searching and investigating what had happened. So the friend that Paige had the sleepover with confirmed that nothing had seemed weird about Paige when she left that morning. Like, it just seemed like a regular morning. There was nothing, she wasn't acting weird. She didn't say anything about like leaving or not going to work. So there was no reason that her friend could come up with for like why she would just kind of disappear. One of the things that they knew for sure was that she'd never made it to the bus. She never got on the bus to go to this neighboring town. And so police had to figure out like what happened between point A at her friend's house and then point B, which was supposed to be the bus stop. And so that's where the search began and the investigation began. And 2 days after the search started, it abruptly stopped because the worst was confirmed and Paige's body was found on the side of the road in an area that was kind of like overgrown with grass and kind of hidden from the like from a street view. And it was about 2 miles away from the bus stop where she was supposed to take the bus to work. And as soon as the police found her body, they hadn't confirmed that it was her, but they were pretty sure it was her. At that same time, there had been another girl who had gone missing in a nearby area. So they
Mm.
weren't sure if it was her or if it was this other girl that had gone missing.
So it was only 2 days?
Yeah,
Like,
it was only
she
48
went
hours
missing.
later.
Okay. That's pretty
Yep,
good.
2 days later. Yeah,
That's
it
pretty
is.
good.
And it's actually a lot better than that even, but we'll talk about that later. But the other girl that had gone missing, before they like were able to confirm who it was, they found this other girl. She had just like run off. So
Oh,
they
okay.
knew basically that it was Paige before they had it confirmed. But once she was identified, they were able to kind of continue with the investigation and kind of move things forward with it. And it was pretty clear as soon as they found her body that this was not an accident because her body had been brutalized. Like, this was a very, very violent, brutal death that she had. An autopsy of her body revealed that she had been stabbed at least 61 times
Oh my gosh.
and that there were like 85 other cuts found on her body, not stab wounds, but
What?
like cuts. And many of those were defensive wounds, her trying to like fight off her attacker. And total, with all of those combined stab wounds and other wounds, she had like 146 knife wounds all over her body, which is
That
just
is,
crazy. I
yeah,
just like can't.
unimaginable.
I can't with that. Like, I just don't even know what that is. That's horrible. And the really horrible part is that 43 of these actual stab wounds were to her head and neck.
My
So,
gosh.
based on all of that information, the police figured that this attack was obviously frenzied, obviously overkill, and it seemed like it was kind of like in the heat of the moment, a crime of passion sort of thing, not a
Yeah,
premeditated murder.
that's what I would think.
Yeah. And police believed that she knew who killed her because of how personal this attack was. Like, you don't just stab some random person you don't know in the face 40 times. That's
Right.
just like not usually how those attacks happen. Yeah, usually if that's how people are killed, it's by somebody that they know. At least that's my opinion. I don't know. Seems like that's the case in a lot
Yeah,
of
I
these
mean,
stories.
you would think so.
Yeah. So obviously like the overkill on this murder is like unbelievable. Like, I don't even understand what happened here. And police were obviously horrified and they decided they were going to do everything they could to figure out what had happened to her. And they started with trying to track her movements the day of the murder after she left her friend's house after their sleepover. And so police canvassed the street that Paige usually took to get to the bus stop, and they were speaking to everybody who she knew to try and find leads. And so with that combination, they started to get some information. There was a local business owner who told the police that the deli owner next door had been like urgently looking for cleaning supplies the day that Paige went missing. And
Okay.
if that's not a red flag, I don't know what is. Like, as soon as I hear that, I'm like, oh, we've got our guy looking for cleaning supplies the day of her murder. That's that's it. That's what we want. So, upon hearing this, the police, they wanted to get as much CCTV footage as they could of the street around the times that Paige had was supposed to have been on that street. And
Right.
so they were able to get a hold of a lot of CCTV footage. Basically the footage of the street um just kind of pointed at the deli. They could see Paige going into this deli called Delicious Deli, and they could see her go in, and they went through hours of CCTV footage after she went in, and she never left this deli. And so
Oh,
they were like, okay, we're going to look into the deli and the owner of the deli and who was working that day. And
seems
so
promising.
yeah, seems like that's probably what happened. Something happened in there. She like never came back out of there. So, John Leatham, and again, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. I don't speak any sort of Scottish, so I have no idea how that's pronounced, but that's what it looks like. John Leatham was the owner of the deli. He was 32 years old. He was married and he had 2 children. And when police questioned him about Paige, he was like, I didn't see her that day. He's like, not sure. I don't know. Which is like, okay. But Paige and her mom frequently went to this deli, like all the time. And it was sort of Paige's like routine to stop in at this deli and get like a breakfast roll and then get on the bus and go to work. Like that was kind of her routine. So it would
Okay.
be almost more weird for her to have not gone to the shop than it would have been for her to go into it. So when he said that he hadn't seen her, they were like, okay,
Mm,
but also like we saw you. We didn't see you, but we saw her walk into your deli and then never leave. And you're saying you didn't see her. So that's weird. And so basically they tried to get like a picture of what his day looked like, and they knew that he'd opened the deli around 7 in the morning on March 19th, the day that Paige disappeared. And because they had a lot of probable cause, they got a hold of more CCTV footage from his shop and from the street, and they started just combing through like hours and hours of this footage, and they had no idea how much information that they'd get from the footage. And so basically this footage shows like exactly what happened in kind of like
so
a weird way.
he was like an idiot because
Yes.
he basically caught himself on camera,
Yes. The murder itself was not on camera,
but the
but
aftermath.
everything he did afterwards was caught on CCTV footage. So at 7:17 a.m., they have footage of John walking into the deli with his hands full of like what looks like bags of rolls. Um and like he's starting to open up the shop, like he's getting ready to do his day. And at 8:21 a.m., footage outside of the shop, the deli shop, shows Paige walking into the deli with a dark colored bag on her right shoulder. And at this point, the footage kind of just jumps forward. It's 9:58 a.m. and all the shutters are closed in the deli, and Leatham has parked his car like across the sidewalk outside of his little shop, and you can see him like around the same time. He's jogging. He jogs to a nearby store and gets what police now know he gets cleaning supplies and garbage bags. And then he jogs back to his shop. And then at 10:03 a.m., he goes back outside. He opens his trunk door, leaves it open, goes back into his shop, and then he's seen carrying on camera a large black bag to his car and putting it in the trunk. We would later find out that this was Paige's body. Like, he moved in broad daylight her body to his car. And not only was it broad daylight, but there were people around, like walking around watching him do this. And he just like bold as hell, just like
Yeah.
did this. So
Okay.
I'm gonna play the footage for you just so that you can see a little bit better what I'm talking about, because it's hard to describe a little bit. But and also anybody listening, I'll put the link for this in the show notes. But it kind of helps visualize a little bit better what police kind of saw and how suspicious this guy. He basically nailed the coffin himself on this one. So I'm gonna play it real fast.
What's surprising to me is just that he's really young.
Yeah,
Whenever I hear about crimes like this, I always think that it's like this 50-year-old man that's just having a heyday, but this guy's young.
yeah. He's 32. He's got a small family. Like, normal guy. I think for me, the shocking thing about this footage is like, I don't just how normal he looks doing all of this stuff. Like, you're watching it and you know what he's just done.
Yeah,
And
and
he's
there's
just like
people
walking
around him,
around. There's
people
people,
walking
literally
down the
people
street,
just walking
walking by
everywhere.
his job.
Yeah. And he's just running around trying to clean up a murder that he like a brutal murder. It wasn't just like a regular like this person made me angry
Murder.
and I shot them. It's
Yeah.
like an overkill, like a very brutal murder. The reason I think that they don't show the part of the footage where Paige's body was moved from the shop to the car, first just to be respectful of her, but also like her foot, like her white socked foot was seen sticking out of the bags in the footage. Like,
Oh
you
my
could see
gosh.
her body. Like, and he just did that in broad daylight. He was just like, cool beans. I'm just gonna move this person that
Was
I
he
just
just
killed.
like in shock that he had just murdered somebody like that? You know, like was this just like a like we said like a frenzied kill and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I just did that." I mean, obviously like he's evil and whatever. I'm not saying not that, but I'm
Oh
just
no,
saying
yeah.
he probably didn't plan on doing this at this time right in the start of his day and
Yeah, no.
probably just was like, "Well, shoot. I got to do something about this."
Yeah. I think that's basically what happened. We'll see later, like he obviously gets arrested and charged with this, but he doesn't his story is baloney. Like, it's not true. At least I don't think it's true. And so and he never tells a different story, because
Well,
if he told the real story, he probably wouldn't get appeals or parole ever in his life. So he's stuck to his version of events. But basically, like, I think that this just happened. I don't know what happened in that store. Nobody knows what happened. But something happened and he freaking lost it. And then I think he had a moment of clarity after it was done. And he was just like, no remorse. I gotta get it. I gotta get rid of the evidence. Like, I can't. Nobody can find out what I've done. And
and
so,
did he open the store back up for the rest of the day?
yes. So after he put her body in the trunk of the car and closed the door and drove away, police believe, he's never confirmed this, but this is what police believe. They believe he went home to his house where his family was and put her in their garden shed, changed clothes.
What?
Yeah, just put her in the shed and on his property. And then he changed his pants and he bought bleach, like bottles of bleach, and then went back to the store, the deli, and he opened it back up. And throughout the day, he continued cleaning up the crime scene, which they believe was in the kitchen in the back of the deli. So that's ridiculous. He like closed the shop down for a few hours to get rid of all the evidence, clean up the crime scene, move Paige's body, and then he just went back and acted like the day was totally normal and served people food
Oh my
like
gosh.
it was no big deal while her like literally her blood was still in his kitchen.
That's
It's ridiculously gross.
disgusting and
What a
terrible.
horrible
Okay.
person. So, police obviously did like I said, they searched everything. They searched his house, they searched his car, they searched the deli, and in the deli, it looked really clean because it had been 2 days, right? He'd had 2 days to clean it up, so it was a pretty clean crime scene. But he was also stupid, which we know because he was caught on video footage doing all of this stuff. And so police they did like a deep dive to try and find any evidence and they moved his fridge out of the way and they found lots of blood. And they found blood in a few different other places in the shop as well. And they analyzed the blood and it was confirmed to be Paige's.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so as soon as they had that information, this cemented that they were indeed like I think the video footage was like plenty of evidence in my opinion, but that was a little circumstantial. So with the forensic evidence with the blood, they were able to actually arrest him and charge him with Paige's murder. And they saw the whole cover up start to finish on camera. And so they had a pretty ironclad case against him.
Right.
And after he
Like,
was arrested, he continued to say that he had no idea what they were talking about. And then they showed him the footage and they were like, "So you never saw her? She went into your deli and never came out. And then you carried a body to your car and you're saying it wasn't her." And he was like, "Okay, fine. I killed her." It's like, cool. So I'm only laughing because of how ridiculous this guy is. Like
yeah,
I
no, I
don't
mean, that's
know.
insane.
Did he think he was actually gonna get away with that? Like, okay, whatever. Especially when you've already been arrested and they found her blood in your actual shop.
Yeah,
But
that's dumb.
instead of having a trial, they had a trial, and the evidence against him was overwhelming. And this was in the trial, this was his story. This is what John Leatham said happened. He said that Paige came into his shop that morning and like normal, she got her roll. I'm going to be honest, I don't know what that is. They say roll over and over again. I don't think it's what we in America would consider a roll. I think it's something else, but I don't know what it is. That was just a random side note because they
Yeah, no,
talk about her
I'm
going
sure
into that shop and getting that same thing, but I don't know what it is.
it's
Anyways,
probably a
he said that she
sandwich,
came
but
in. Yeah. Okay.
also, just a side note for the listeners, because I saw this on the article that you sent me, and I feel like this is kind of like important to know. This is a little woman. She's not tall.
Oh no, she was I think 4'8".
She's,
She was like
yeah,
tiny.
I'm like, she's below 5 feet tall. She doesn't even reach 5 feet. So,
Yeah,
like, she's
she's
little.
small. She's a small girl. Yeah. And yeah. So she's this just small, petite little girl, and she's just coming in for
She's very
breakfast. And
cute.
yeah, she's beautiful. She really is. Um, which makes me think that something happened in that shop that was
Yeah,
inappropriate
yeah.
in nature. But that is not what John Leatham said. John Leatham said that she came in there and it was just like a normal interaction, and then she started threatening him and told him that if he didn't give her a job, she would tell everybody that he had touched her inappropriately and that he panicked and that's why he killed her.
Eh, nah,
So let's
no, I'm
poke
okay.
some holes in that story. Obviously, police were doubtful of this story, just like we are, because it makes no sense. Paige already had a job. She had a part time job, like I said, at the hairdresser's. And she was on her way to that job when she stopped at this deli. So I'm not sure why she would need another job.
Like, also, why would she go straight sorry. why would she go straight to threatening? I'm sure there's like other, like, you don't approach somebody and
Yeah.
just threaten them for a job. You ask if they're
No.
hiring.
Exactly.
So if you're gonna make this story sellable, then say that you did know her. She came into your shop several times begging for a job, and then maybe your story would be believable. And even then, it's not believable. But
Even then it's not, but
you're really not selling it this way.
well, exactly. And it's like she was only 15. She was in school. She didn't have time for two part-time jobs, and there was no indication that she was looking for a second job or that she was going to quit her hairdresser job and try and get a different job. Like her family and friends were like there was nothing like that. Like she liked her hairdresser job. That was where she wanted to stay. There's no reason that she would ever need a job from this guy. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it makes no
Doesn't
sense.
make any sense.
And also, like,
But
why is the crime scene in his kitchen then?
yeah, and
There's no,
that's the
like,
part that's
why?
weird. I don't know. Like they do know that when she went into the shop, it was just him and her in the deli. So he could have done anything in that time.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. She's really petite, really small, right? Like he could have dragged her back there really
Yeah,
easily.
and that's
He
probably
also
what
could have
happened.
brandished a knife against her and walked her back there.
Exactly.
I mean, obviously he wasn't
Ridiculous.
going to murder her in the middle of his shop,
Yeah,
in the customer
exactly.
area, the
Apparently
lobby.
he was aware enough of his actions to kill her in a place where people wouldn't see if they walked past his deli. So, it wasn't premeditated, but it was clearly not just like darkness took over and he can't remember what happened.
Yeah, I'm going to say that he came onto her and she was uncomfortable with it, and then he decided it was time for her to go. That's my
That's
theory.
my best guess. If I had to like put money on a theory, that would be it. I think that he came onto her sexually. I think she was 15 and he was a 32-year-old married guy and she was like, no,
No thanks,
you're
sir.
gross. I'm going to go now." And he decided that he was angry and that she couldn't say no to him and that when she fought, I think it made him even more angry and he killed her in a very brutal way. Because in the autopsy, there was no indication that she'd been sexually assaulted.
Hmm.
So they knew that that hadn't happened and they couldn't come up with on their own like another explanation. Police never put forth like what they thought happened in that shop. That what we just talked about was just like our theories about what could have happened. But to me, it's the only thing that makes sense. I don't know what else would motivate him to react like that, but
Yeah, no,
nobody reacts
exactly.
like that, anyways. So,
You don't just randomly like see this 15-year-old walk into your shop and be like, yeah, I'm gonna murder her. That's it.
yeah,
No.
that's
No,
freaking, it's
sorry.
so weird to
There's
me.
there's a motivation there, I think.
Yeah.
So
But for some reason that John has never been forthcoming about, Paige was killed in his shop and something caused him to snap. And I don't know what it was, but I think everybody is probably on the same page about what it probably was.
I like don't want to be too graphic here, but like she was a regular in his shop and I'm sure he had some fantasies. Like I'm sure he had built that moment up in his mind
Oh,
when
yeah.
he was going to have some kind of something with her. And so I'm sure when the time came and he was turned down, he lost his shiz.
Yeah. The rejection, like, the fantasy and the rejection didn't mix. And so part of me wonders if, like, we were talking about, she said no, and he was like, you can't say no to me. And so he dragged her back there and he was going to do what he wanted to do. But she fought back more than he was anticipating, and it made him even angrier. Like, that's the only thing I can think of because otherwise, why would he take her back there to begin with? Like,
No,
why was she
yeah.
even in his kitchen? Like you were saying earlier. So There had to be some reason for him to drag her back there, and the only reason I can think of is something like that.
Yeah, I
Uh,
agree.
it's also possible that he lured
Wow.
her back there with something. Like
Come
maybe
get
he
your
was,
sandwich. It's back
yeah,
here
or like, let
today.
me show you, like, since nobody's in the shop, let me show you how we make this stuff or whatever, and like brings her back there
Yeah,
and
that's true.
something like that. But we will never know unless John decides to stop being an absolute jerkwad, murderer, garbage man, and tell us the truth. So, in the trial, they went over the evidence. They showed the video footage that I described earlier. The neighbor, the owner of the neighboring shop to the deli, he confirmed that John came in and bought cleaning supplies, and they talked about like all of the details, like the deli remained open into the afternoon after John had killed her in his shop that morning. And the 2 days before Paige's body were found, they believe that she was in that garden shed that whole time, and that sometime the day that they found her body, he moved her body to that spot where they found it. So for 2 days, he just went about life as a Scottish family man while he had Paige's body in his garden shed.
Wouldn't you be so nervous that like your wife was gonna find like go in there for some reason and
Yeah,
find it? And then at
exactly.
that point, would he have like murdered his wife as well? I mean, like, oh my
Maybe. I don't
gosh.
I don't know.
I just,
Um
I don't know how you have that much
Ridiculous.
confidence. Like, I obviously cannot imagine that murdering somebody. I just obviously have never even thought about doing that. But I can't imagine murdering somebody, leaving them in a place where, I mean, technically somebody could just walk in and find them and just
Yeah,
being like, chill for 2 days. I just, wow.
it's crazy. And literally the day after the murder, he took his family on like an outing to a neighboring town, and they just like were living life. He was just like no remorse, no chill. If she had never been found, he never would have come forward. There was
No.
no remorse there.
No, yeah.
He was just hoping he got away with it, which is obviously not what happened because he was a real dummy. In
Yeah.
2016, there's video footage of everything. You can't just like do what he did in broad
Can't
daylight
just do
and
this.
get away with it. But after they went back over all the evidence in trial, John pled guilty and he was sentenced by a judge named Lady Ray,
Hmm.
which I
There you
thought
go.
was pretty dope. Lady Ray.
Lady Ray.
Um, yep, he was sentenced to life in prison, and he had to serve a minimum of 27 years before being eligible for parole. And um, I thought that was a pretty light sentence, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like 27
Yeah.
years from now, he could be like
In
60
his
and still
60s. Yeah.
get out. But John wasn't happy with that sentence. He thought it was unfair. So he appealed the sentencing, and for some reason, he was granted a reduced sentence. So instead of
What?
serving 27 years, he only had to serve 23 years. And I don't know who the judge was that made that decision, but that's a dumb decision, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
And according to the judge that made the decision, it was because the murder hadn't been premeditated and John had shown remorse after he did it. Let me just put this out
Right.
there into the universe. I think if a person can stab somebody 60 plus times without provocation, move their body in broad daylight with people around, and then open his deli and continue serving people food, that person is a monster and they shouldn't get a reduced sentence
Yeah.
ever.
No.
Like, that
No,
doesn't
that's
make any sense.
no.
That means
Mm,
that he could be released when he's 55, and that is plenty of time for him to live a life, a long life.
yeah.
Like, he
No,
can do
that's
lots of
gross.
stuff with that. And I don't think,
And he doesn't deserve that.
no, somebody that took somebody else's life in such a horrible way, who just snapped, to me, is a danger to society. You shouldn't
Yep.
be able to just let people like that back out onto the streets. I
No, just like for the sake of like fairness. If you murder somebody, your life also should end.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's forfeit
You
now.
ended their life. You ended their life at 15 when they had the whole world ahead of them. They could have been anybody.
Literally. And Paige was
So,
going to do stuff. She was doing well in school. She had her hairdresser job. I just like it's just not fair. It's not fair. And
yeah.
just because he's pretending to have remorse, that doesn't mean anything, because if he had truly felt remorse for his actions, he would have owned up to what he did and turned himself in. That's what remorse
Yeah,
feels like.
exactly.
So, he would never have done that if he hadn't been caught literally red-handed. So, I disagree with whatever judge decided that he should serve less time. But after
Gross.
everything happened, obviously Paige's family was like distraught and horrified and super sad that Paige was taken from them. And her mom, Pamela, set up a charity called Paige's Promise. And the goal of the charity was to teach children self defense. And it also supported families who had children who had been murdered. So it's kind of cool that
Wow.
her mom
Yeah, that is.
like took that horrible thing that happened to her and like chose to help people who'd been in similar situations. Yeah, that
Good
is
for
the
her.
story of Paige Daughtry.
Here you go.
There you have it. There you have it. Um, tip of the week: don't trust literally anybody, especially people that look like regular deli shop owners, because nobody is ever what they seem. End of story. Super depressing.
Stay frosty, y'all.
See you next week.